All participants, your lines have been placed on a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's call. Today's call is being recorded. If anyone has any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to hand the call over to Josh Finch. Thank you. You may begin.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us for today's media teleconference to provide an update on the agency's Boeing Crew Flight Test to the International Space Station, the first flight with astronauts in the company's CST-100 Starliner spacecraft. Leadership on the call today will also discuss data reviews from Boeing's Orbital Flight Test 2 to the space station. The briefing participants for today are Catherine Leaders, Associate Administrator for NASA's Space Operations Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters, Steve Stitch, Manager, NASA's Commercial Crew Program at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, Joel Montalbano, Manager, NASA's International Space Station at NASA's Johnson Space Center, and Mark Nappy, Vice President and Program Manager for the CST-100 Starliner at Boeing. We'll begin today's call with opening comments from our speakers, and then we'll turn it over for questions from the media. First, I'll go to Kathy.
Hey, I think sitting here today, I'm lucky enough to be at KSC and being part of our countdown to our exciting Artemis mission, the uncrewed test flight of our exploration system coming up here on Monday morning. But what's really cool about being and working for NASA and being in space ops is that we're also continuing to bring online our LEO crew systems, and the CCP, Boeing, and ISS teams continue to make progress bringing the Boeing Crew Transportation System to the ISS online and continuing to learn, as we've learned, that these uncrewed demonstration missions are great checkouts and help make sure that before we put people on, we've really fully fleshed out the system. And so I appreciate all of you being here today and taking this 1 hour out of your Artemis coverage to listen and hear from Steve and Joel and Mark on all the work that the teams have been doing to be able to make progress toward the next exciting phase for us, which is to bring the Boeing Crew Transportation System online and have that demonstrated through our CFT mission that we're working so hard forward. So, Steve, you want to let everybody know what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it is a very exciting time in commercial crew as we bring on the Boeing Crew Transportation System, and it's exciting to work multiple vehicles with crew transportation in mind. You know, it's been a pretty busy time frame since landing. The team has wrapped up the post-flight work, going through all the data and all the systems, and that work is wrapped up. I got to participate with Mark and his team, along with some of the NASA team, in a celebration for the orbital flight test just a week or so ago, and it was great to see the enthusiasm in the team, and we talked a lot, both Mark and I at that meeting, about pivoting over, and we're moving toward the crewed flight. It'll be really exciting to fly Butch and Sunny, and for Sunny, you know, it's the same spacecraft that she named after the OFT-1 flight, Calypso, so that's really exciting time frame too. We have recently completed the first big integrated simulation between United Launch Alliance, the Boeing team, and the NASA team with the crew, practicing the launch countdown and getting the crew in the spacecraft and getting ready for flight. So that was a really exciting event as well. Mark's going to talk a lot about the spacecraft and how that work is progressing, but the vehicle's coming along very well in the C-3PF as well as we get the spacecraft built out for flight. And then we're working toward, you know, in the fall we'll have a really important integrated crew validation test where the crew will get in the spacecraft and check it out with the suits and the seats and the integrated ecosystem. So that's a big test that we're working toward here in the fall. Currently we're targeting a launch date as early as February of 2023. It's a busy time frame around there, and so early February is likely the best window in that time frame. Mark and the NASA team we're getting all the products ready and everything we need to get ready for the flight to go for that time frame. It is a busy time, as Kathy said, and I want to congratulate the Boeing team for their role in the Artemis mission. I'm sure they're very excited to go fly the core stage, which they're responsible for the very first time. And I know Mark Nappy personally was involved in that, and I'm sure he's excited to see that flight fly on Monday. As I said earlier, we're really pivoting to CFT. We'll fly when we're ready, and very excited to continue to work on this mission, and I'll turn it over to Joel.
Hey, thank you, Steve, and welcome again to everyone, and thank you for taking time out to listen to us today. Onboard operations are really going well. We are very happy with what we're doing on board with the crews, and just last Saturday we concluded a successful SpaceX 25 mission with a landing just outside of Kennedy Space Center. We returned some critical science research and some critical EVA hardware that we're going to be using to play forward our EVA decision coming up in early October. So the teams are doing well and just on board, just going well. I just can't say enough good things about that. We're looking forward to seeing another Starliner back docked to the International Space Station following the successful OFT-2 mission. As you know, long term, we're planning a Starliner visit once a year. Steve mentioned Sunny and Butch. We expect this mission to be docked about 8 days. We're still working the details, but think approximately 8 days or so. Butch and Sunny, in addition to the Starliner activities, we're going to have them do ISS activities, whether it be research utilization, some commercialization work, or technology development, just like we did with Bob and Doug when they were on their SpaceX test mission. So, an exciting time for everybody. ISS, I've said many times, is a test bed for exploration, and with the upcoming launch of the Artemis 1 mission next week, it's exciting to do our little work on ISS to support human spaceflight. So looking forward, we're excited to have this mission on the books and looking forward to the Starliner dock to the International Space Station. A huge thanks to the Commercial Crew Program, to the Boeing teams, and with that, I'll hand it over to Mark.
All right, thank you, Joel. Well, first of all, thanks for everybody being on the call today. It's really pretty neat being in the launch environment again, so really wish our SLS friends luck next week in getting that mission off. The OFT-2 flight we reported after the mission was very successful, and we were very happy with the observed performance of all our hardware, software, and of course our team. After the flight, like Steve said, we did a lot of in-depth post-test analysis, and there are 252 FTOs, or flight test objectives, that we had planned, and we went through and looked at all the data associated with all of those FTOs. And we're just wrapping up with the final report now. Matter of fact, we turn it in tomorrow. So based on that analysis, we're even more pleased with how the flight performed. And we're very much looking forward to flying crew on CFT next. So to talk a little bit more about the analysis, or the results of the analysis, I should say, OFT-2 was a test flight, and it was a demonstration of the vehicle's capabilities as well as a test of how all the integrated systems work together. These integrated systems performed extremely well, but we knew that we were going to learn something from the flight, and there was likely going to be some, what I'll call, fine-tuning that we would need to do to make those systems work together better and more like the design was intended. So there's a minimal amount of changes that we're going to be making for CFT as a result of this fine-tuning. We looked at all the in-flight anomalies, all the anomaly reports, and then, of course, the analysis that I talked about earlier for the post-test was all completed and really resulted in about 4 major areas needing to be looked at and understood really well, and then driving some changes for CFT. The first one was the OMAC thrusters. If you remember, during the flight, we had 2 thrusters that were deselected during orbital insertion. There was a very in-depth fault tree analysis that was performed, and it was determined, or it's being determined, and we're working towards flight rationale, that we had some debris related conditions that resulted in the deselection and reselecting other thrusters to enable the orbital insertion. So we have done all the inspections required on CFT to make sure that that same condition doesn't exist, and we're ready to move towards the flight rationale once we complete all of the fault tree analysis. But we've done everything we need to do on CFT to clear it. There was also on the service module and the crew module, there were RCS thrusters that were deselected as well. We've determined that the main leading cause of that is low inlet pressures and some manifold dynamics that's delayed the sensor responses. And those can be remedied by a very small change to the mission data load that's prepared for each mission. So it's really a tweak of timing and tolerances to be able to make sure that that doesn't happen to us again. So that's all in work for CFT. The active thermal conditioning system, if you remember, we had some high pump pressures that were detected during the mission. So we've determined that that was due to a restriction of flow through some of the through the lines. We found there were some filters in the system that we've determined are really not required, and so we've removed those filters to alleviate that problem from happening in the future. And then in the area of the VESTA performance, the VESTA system performed very well, but we found that it was collecting quite a bit of data and was really was more data that could be managed. So we've altered our flight software to accommodate this increase in data, and that's all part of a software revision that's currently in work. So all that work, along with the team carefully reviewing the flight software and CFT vehicle, all that has resulted in accepting, the conditions for CFT for flight. All this work has been planned into our schedules, and we've determined that launch readiness date that Steve talked about in the February time frame. And, of course, as we get closer to that date, we'll be able to get an exact date for you. The preparation of the vehicle on CFT is going extremely well. The service module and the crew module are on plan, scheduled to be mated in the November time frame. The engineering products, the VCNs, and all the hazard reports are all in work, and we have good plans that get us to support that date in February. And then we have one flight software revision that we're doing that also will support the early February opportunity. Mission operations planning and simulations and training is all in work, and again, all support the schedule. So we're in good shape to execute these plans to be ready for that flight in February. One other added area is PCM1. We have gone through all the same process of baselining our schedules and understanding everything that needs to be completed, and we're targeting a fall opportunity. Both the crew module and the service module are also in work on the floor, so we have 4 vehicles in flow in the C3PF. And when we get closer to vehicle readiness, we'll be working a launch date with Steve and company as well. And so that's everything that we have this morning. There's a lot of information there, but I know that you're interested, so I'll pass it back over to Josh.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to each of our speakers for your comments. We'll now turn it over for media questions. Please remember to press *1 on your phone to enter the queue. And our first question today will go to Stephen Clark at Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thanks. I think my question is probably for Mark. These 4 areas that are going to require what you called minimal work, is that work, are those corrective actions already underway, and is that what primarily drove the schedule from potentially end of calendar year 2022 into the February timeframe? Thanks.
Yes, you're exactly right. Remember, after the OFT-2 mission, we said we had schedules that supported late 22, the December timeframe for a CFT mission, and we still needed to go and look at the fallout of OFT-2 and the lessons learned to apply them to that schedule. So that's exactly what we did. We looked at all these systems there were areas that we needed to go do a little bit more work on the systems, and we plugged that into the plan, and that's what moved us out by about a month, 5 weeks or so.
And our next question is from Joey Roulette at Reuters.
Hey, thank you. I guess this question's for Mark or Steve. Other than those 4 main issues that popped up during OFT2, is there anything else that you guys noticed while you were looking at the data that looked a little off, or anything that looked off nominal during the mission? And also for Mark, are there any plans currently to certify Vulcan for Starliner? Are you guys talking to ULA for that at this point? Thanks.
I'll start with the second half first. We are certainly looking at the launch vehicle integration for when we run out of Atlases after PCM6. So yes, that's actively in work, and our teams are working with the launch vehicle providers for that, and we'll be having to make a decision probably sometime early next year on what we're going to go do and as moving forward. On the first question, we're ongoing with reviewing all the information from pre-OFT2 as well as post-OFT2 and the things that have popped up since we've been processing the vehicle. And so there are a number of small things that have also been implemented into the flow. The ones that I outlined for you are really the major items that caused us to add a little bit more time into the schedule and were the biggest changes that were made. But there were a number of smaller items as well. Steve, over to you if you had anything else.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I would characterize the smaller things as really learning relative to how to go fly the crewed flight test. For example, if you recall on the rendezvous and docking day, we learned a little bit. First flight, OFT2 was the first flight of the NASA docking system. So to get the backup side of that system working, side B, we had to do a few things to sort of reboot it and get it up. So there was a number of things like that. But really, when looking at the data, there was nothing else that was really major. The entry system performed great. The parachutes performed very well. We're in the middle of doing the reconstruction data for parachutes. And so, overall the flight went extremely well, proving the Starliner system. Always there's things to learn about the system and how the temperature and pressures are registered by the flight software, but, I think Mark characterized it very well.
And our next question is from Jeff Faust at Space News.
Hey, good afternoon. A question probably for Steve or Joel. You mentioned you're looking at the February timeframe for CFT, but you've got a busy schedule at the station. I was wondering if you could talk about sort of what other things are going on in the station around that time that you would have to work around, and what sort of priority CFT would take versus those other events to ensure that you get the flight flown and the vehicle certified in time for a post-certification mission in the fall. Thanks.
I can take a crack at it, and then I'll let Joel comment. I mean, that time frame is pretty busy, and especially as you get toward the late February time frame. There is a Soyuz handover in that time frame in early March, and then we'll have another crewed handover in that time frame between Crew 5 and Crew 6, and we've got to kind of work at where those things will fly. Obviously, the Soyuz and the crewed handovers are important, and then CFT is important as well, but then we just have to sort of work out how we can fit all those things in. And if you go back and look at the spring time frame we just encountered, we're pretty good at being able to work through a busy manifest when we were able to fly an Axiom flight, do a crewed handover, and then also complete the OFT, orbit flight test mission. And I'll see if Joel has comments.
Thanks, Steve. Steve mentioned the first 6 months of next year are incredibly busy. We have a SpaceX cargo mission. Steve mentioned the Crew 6 mission and the Crew 5 handover. They'll have a Soyuz handover progress mission. We have a Northrop Grumman mission scheduled in there, and then an Axiom 2 mission as well. So those first 6 months are going to be running. From a priority standpoint, CFT is a big deal for us, right? You know, our goal, our agency goal is to get 2 U.S. commercial providers up and running as soon as we can. And so when these guys are ready in February, we'll be making sure there's room for them, and they will be high priority unless we're working a major issue on board space station.
And our next question is from Irene Klotz at Aviation Week.
Thanks. This is for Mark, and I'm sorry if this is repeating something you said. There's a lot of background noise where I am. So the valve redesign, is that something that Boeing is definitely going to move forward with? And if so, would that be implemented for PCM-1, or could it be phased in after the post-certification missions? And if so, how does that affect your schedule for PCM-1? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. That's a good question. Well, just recap a little bit. You know, we have gotten a good root cause analysis done. It was when the last time we talked, there was all the different NASA agency or different NASA functions helped us come to a good root cause analysis, and we determined that, you know, there was moisture in the system, reacted with the aluminum material of the valve and the NTO, and informed some corrosive products that caused the valves to bind up. So near term on OFT2, remember we sealed the area where we thought moisture was coming through. We purged the system continuously through launch, and we did not have the problem. So we feel we have a good short-term solution that we are enhancing slightly for CFT because it's being implemented during the build and not after the vehicle was built. So we're flying that same configuration on CFT. We are also actively working. Matter of fact, we had an hour session this morning on the design process that we're going through to change the design to completely seal the areas where moisture could come in and change the material from aluminum to something probably closer to crest, so that we don't see the same type of combination of issues that will create corrosion. So that design schedule has been laid out. It's tight for PCM-1, so we have to go work that schedule to see if we can get it in for PCM-1. If we can't, obviously we have other alternatives, but our goal is to try to get it done as soon as possible.
And our next question is from Tim Fernholz at Quartz.
Hello. Thank you for taking my question. This is for Mark. I'm just curious, now that we're through the OFT and looking onto the crewed flight test, can you tell us a little bit about Starliner as a business? Do you have any updates on non-NASA customers for the vehicle? And I'm curious, given the valve redesign in the works, do you have a sense of whether this program could ever be profitable for Boeing? Thank you.
There's a lot there. First of all, you know, our obligations are to NASA and to fly the PCM missions for what we're on contract to do, and that's, you know, 1 through 6. So that is our priority, and we certainly are going to meet those commitments. Second is looking at, you know, what do we want to do to increase the profitability of the program, and there are a number of things that we are actively working. As in the PAM missions, we have an opportunity to create a 5th seat for our vehicle, and then there are other opportunities in low Earth orbit. There seems to be a very big market for us to address. So in order to do that, there's quite a bit of activity in our company to determine how do we want to work on our vehicle to make it you know, long-lasting and something that can be turned around quickly and be able to support the number of missions that are out there in our low Earth orbit market. So yes, we are actively working that to understand what we can go accomplish.
Thank you.
And our next question is from Marcia Dunn, the Associated Press.
Yes, for Mr. Nappy, you mentioned the thruster issue with some debris. What was the debris? How did it get there? Just looking for a little more information on that and whether it was perhaps worker-related.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and unfortunately, we don't get the hardware back, so we will never know exactly what was the issue. But what we do is, we create a fault tree of all the possible causes, and there could be, in some cases, hundreds of them, and we go through and we rule out every single one by analysis or test or by inspection. And so that that's when we don't get the hardware back. That's the hard way to have to go and try to figure out what potentially happened to us. And sometimes you nail it down to 2 or 3 probable causes, and you have to live with the fact that I don't know which of the 3 it is, but I've ruled them out because I went to the hardware that I do have and made sure that that condition doesn't exist. And that's really the process that we went through with this vehicle. So we do not know where the debris may have came from, or I guess there could be a number of guesses of how it happened, but the bottom line is that looks to be the leading root cause, and we've eliminated that by looking at the CFT vehicle and making sure that there's absolutely no debris in the system.
Our next question is from Marcia Smith at spacepolicyonline.com.
Thanks so much. I think this question is probably for Mark and Steve, and then a second part that's for Joel. You've had some trouble getting the Dragons down because of bad weather in the splashdown area. And I'm wondering, do you anticipate it's going to be easier for Starliner to land since it's landing on the surface and not in the ocean? And I'm curious, Joel, how disruptive is it for the crew schedules and everything when a crew stays several days longer than was planned because of bad weather?
I can take a crack at the question relative to landing and the weather. Yeah, it has been fairly challenging to find the right weather criteria to bring the Dragons down for the crewed missions we've flying so far. We've always been able to find that window. I think Starliner will have some similar kinds of constraints relative to winds, just giving that system with the parachutes. The problem with parachutes is the prevailing wind essentially drives the kind of horizontal motion or horizontal speed that you get at landing, and so I think it'll be equally challenging. We've been very fortunate on the 2 test flights that we've flown so far with Starliner, both landing really on the planned landing opportunity, kind of on the first attempt, if you will, first day at the White Sands Space Harbor. That may not be the case for every time. I don't want people to think, wow, it seems like White Sands is very easy to get into. We've been fairly fortunate. And then I'll see if Mark has anything to add.
No, I don't have anything else to add. I think characterized it well. We're working the wind conditions and making sure that we have the largest window possible so that we can bring the vehicle down when it's planned.
And this is Joel for mission extensions. So for every crewed mission, we plan consumables for a small extension. Generally, we plan about a week or so if the crew ends up staying on board to while we watch the weather and make sure there's a safe return for them. So there is a small impact to consumables, but again, we plan for it. The good thing, though, is we put them to work. And so I talked to you guys a lot about the utilization and research, the technology development, and the commercialization activities. We always have more of those than the people on board to do it. So when we get a little bonus time, we put the crew to work, and we use that time very effectively.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 on your phone to enter the queue. And our next question will go to David Curley at the Discovery Channel.
Thank you, Josh.
Joel, a broader question with if Starliner comes up and starts flying once a year and you're getting more traffic up there, what are you going to do about accommodations? We talked about this, I guess, a year ago. Are folks just going to sleep in their vehicles, or what's your plan for the station?
So during the handover mission, we have what we do is we talk to the crews beforehand, and we carve out some places for them to sleep. You know, we have the extra sleep station now in the Columbus module. It's called the Casa, and we've used that before. We've had people sleep in the visiting vehicles. There's room in the Columbus module as well. There's some room in the airlock. So what we do is we work with the crews when as they're kind of coming up, and how we're going to split, you know, the new crew, where do they go? Does the old crew move out? And each crew has a little different preference, but we work with them, and for the short amount of time, we're able to easily accommodate the extra crew members. Good question.
Thank you.
And our next question is from Stephen Clark at Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thanks for taking another question. I want to follow up on, I think, Joey Roulette's question early on about the looking at alternate or new launch vehicles for Starliner missions beyond PCM-6 if you need that. I think Mark mentioned you're looking at providers. Just wanted to follow up on that and see if you're looking at other providers besides ULA potentially. And is the Starliner still a relatively launch vehicle agnostic vehicle, as I think Boeing has said previously, but haven't heard that in a while. Is that still the case, easily transferable to different launch vehicles? Thanks.
Yes, we obviously want to look at different options. We have the time to understand what vehicles are available to us and if they can provide us the service that we need. So, you know, that it's just part of the business to look at options, and so we are. The vehicle is, agnostic. I wouldn't say it's easily agnostic because there's adapters that need to be built, and there's different launch operations for the different providers. So we have to consider those when we make our choice.
And our next question is from Irene Klotz at Aviation Week.
Thanks, Josh, and casting a bit of a wider net. I hope it's still within the bailiwick, but I was curious maybe if Kathy and Joel could address the new process that you're looking at for visiting vehicles, specifically the requirement to have a former professional astronaut accompany the crew. You can maybe just give us a little background. Of course, we know this came out of the Axiom-1 flight, but has there been pushback from Axiom and others on that, or is that generally accepted as a good idea at this point?
So, we've talked. Can you guys hear me? I just want to do a voice check.
I can hear you.
Okay. Am I really loud now? We had a lot of learning out of the first Axiom mission. We've talked about first missions and how much you learn, and when we were talking about uncrewed demonstrations. But for the first PAM mission, one of the things we learned is that at least while we're up and running, and we're going to now use this for our next PAM mission, and we'll be looking at probably having the same requirements for our next couple of PAM missions, is to have this need for somebody to really to have an experienced crew member that can support the other members of the team while on orbit to really help out and make sure that the PAM operations are going smoothly. I think the PAM operations went smoothly as a joint team, but Irene, as you know, first time through we learn and refine, and so we're gonna try this and use this as a way to see, with the pool of folks and the group of folks and the experience that we have, follow along and take this learning, and then we'll continue to use that learning and adjust our requirements going forward. But I think this new requirement was really based out of our lessons learned out of the last mission, and then wanting to make sure, and we'll try it this way, and we'll try it for a few times, and then we'll, like we do every single mission we take lessons learned from and go then apply it to the next mission. But I think Axiom 1 was a great overall learning experience for us, because we are going to have to work through this, and one of our jobs is to create the learning environment for us to then be able to live and work in space. And to me, it was another example of how Joel and his team and the International Space Station team and the crew office really worked with the Axiom team to be able to establish that learning for that first mission. And I know our commercial LEO team and the ISS team were working to make sure that we share that learning through the requirement sets we have and the conduct of the follow-on missions, and we'll continue to share that with our industry partners. Joel, you want to add anything?
Yeah, you covered it really well. The thing I'll emphasize is, we always look at the lessons learned and figure out, how we're going to go forward, and then we readdress that in a few missions. So the teams look at it, they see what works, what doesn't work, and then we adjust accordingly.
All right, it looks like we have one more media question in the queue, and I'll go to Joey Roulette at Reuters.
Thanks, Josh. I guess this one's for Kathy or Joel. At what point do NASA and Roscosmos start examining Starliner for the integrated crew flights with the Russians? And I guess for Starliner, will it be the same kind of direct exchange arrangement with the Soyuz seat as is the case with Crew Dragon, or might there be some other kind of arrangement? Thanks.
Hey, Joel, why don't you take this one?
Okay. Yeah, my plan is to start working that this fall. And so, as you know, we signed the integrated crew agreement, which is one flight per year in 22, 23, and 24 with a cosmonaut on SpaceX and an astronaut on Soyuz. But as soon as we get past the September launch campaigns and October launch campaigns, we'll be working on trying to fold in the Boeing and make it a long-term agreement, right? So the goal is a long-term agreement. Every time we fly, we have a cosmonaut on either SpaceX or Boeing, and then an astronaut on the Soyuz spacecraft. But again, we'll start working in detail later this year.
And does that require a new agreement, or is that a modification to the existing agreement?
My initial starting point is going to be a modification. I prefer, the way the agreement is written, we should be able to do a modification.
And one quick little follow-up. Given the differences between Crew Dragon and Starliner, do you expect it might not be a direct barter exchange with the Soyuz seat, or would it be the same? Thanks.
It'll be the same. That's the plan. We're always going to do a barter agreement with no-cost barter, regardless of the vehicle.
Thanks.
And we have one additional question from David Curley at the Discovery Channel.
Thanks, Josh. I guess they're all going to flip out of there. Mark Nappy, just one quick question. With the software changes, what's your protocol about testing out that software, bigger picture of what's gone on with the program over the past several years?
Oh, the software release process is pretty rigorous. First of all, the team goes through and they analyze all the potential candidates to be put into a software release or to a new revision, and that list is reviewed by NASA as well as, and of course, ourselves, and we implement the mandatories. We believe they absolutely have to be done, and then we consider the highly desirable if they can fit into the revision. And so we went through that process this time, go to a program control board and make sure that we have all eyes on it and all the proper disciplines know what we're doing. And then we go into the software change process, where it's a fairly rigorous software set of sprints, very exhaustive testing through our simulation and our labs until it's released in a version, and then tested again with more parties, and then finally released for the vehicle and loading on the vehicle. So it's a pretty rigorous software process that takes several months. So we just nailed down the items that are going to go into this new rev, what we call 1.5.2. We just got those identified at the end of July. Those go through that rigorous process that I just talked about for several months and won't be released until late October, early November.
Is it tested once it's on the vehicle?
Absolutely.
And let's see, Mark, I would add a few things as Steve Stitch. So the NASA team follows along with every software change. And then, Mark talked about that initial level testing that the software programmers do. Then Boeing has a facility called ASIL, which is really a replicate of essentially the avionics system with the flight software. And then they'll test that software in the ASIL facility. And then that also gets deployed to the simulators, and it's tested in the simulators for crew training. And then remember, we've added something called an ASIL mission rehearsal, where we go through all the sequences that are used for flight before the flight. So it does get, in addition to the software testing, it gets that integrated hardware-software testing, which I think is very important, and I know Boeing thinks it is very important as well. So that is the same process we used for the Orbit Flight Test 2, and they worked very well. The software performed exceedingly well during that flight.
Thank you.
Okay, and that looks to be our final question, so I'll turn it over to Kathy Leaders for some closing comments.
Okay. Hey, once again, I really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here. We had promised everyone an update by the end of August, and I appreciate there's a lot of things going on right now, but we also felt really strongly that we needed to give you guys a progress update. As you can hear, as always, this team is carefully stepping through the critical steps that are needed for us to safely conduct the crewed demonstration flight of the Boeing CST system, and targeting now early 2023. And Steve and Joel and Mark Nappy are working diligently to make progress on that, and the team's doing great, buying down the necessary steps for us to get there. But I just wanted to end with, in the same way, I know our NASA and industry team here at KSC and at the center is getting ready for the preps for the upcoming uncrewed test flight of our Artemis crew transportation system. And so I know I can safely speak for the joint team on this call by ending this and saying, go Artemis. So I hope everybody's going to be enjoying this over the weekend and getting ready on Monday. I know we're all saying Godspeed to that vehicle, and as we all know, we know that this is going to be a critical mission for us. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Kathy, and to the media on the call and those listening online. That's going to wrap things up for us here. We'll continue to share more on Starliner's progress online and social media at nasa.gov/commercialcrew, and you can follow more about the Artemis mission ahead of its launch on Monday, August 29th on nasa.gov. Thanks, and have a good day.